consigned to each other. Most of the oil, we use our oil mostly for...
Do you still feel that the third world population is a major concern, the explosion, or is terrorism, has that surpassed that now?
Well, the two are connected.
The two are connected?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the New World Order, what you mean by the New World Order? Right back here.
It's bound to fail.
Talk about the North American Union, sir. You also quoted saying that military men...
National sovereignty will prevail. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to
Hey,
see you.
do you feel the AIDS virus is a bioweapon, or do you think it's a natural occurring disorder or virus, the AIDS virus?
I don't have any idea.
No, nothing to do with National Security Memorandum 200, which calls for immune-ravaging viruses for biological warfare?
I've never heard of that national security.
You wrote it back in the early 70s.
Oh,
Dr.
come on.
Kissinger, you need to...
National Security Memorandum.
Grow up.
He doesn't hear. He's never heard of National Security Memorandum that he penned as National Security Advisor under Richard Nixon. It seems to me that the CFR writes a lot of foreign policy that the government actually uses to create laws and stuff. That's awesome. But do you believe that we should have some sort of public oversight on the discussions that are going on? Even though it becomes policy?
It's all in the open. People want to listen. We have no power. People want to listen to us. That's great. They don't. Fine.
What percentage of your meetings are open to the public like this versus the percentage of your roundtable discussions?
About 50% of our meetings are open.
Yeah.
We're on the record.
My question's pretty simple for either one of you guys or all five of you or whatever the panel. The question's about bin Laden. I was reading in your Foreign Affairs Journal an article titled "Combating Catastrophic Terrorism," written by John Deutsch and Philip Zelikow, describes the need for a major terrorist attack, something of the magnitude of Pearl Harbor, to justify the creation of a national terrorism intelligence center, which would essentially be a Cold War-like structure or a network on a global scale. Philip Zelikow became the executive director of the 9/11 Commission and personally wrote the Commission's report, which...
Do you have a question in this?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Which omitted the collapse of Building 7 and doesn't answer 70% of the victims' families' questions. Why hasn't the FBI or the Justice Department connected bin Laden with 9/11 and formally indicted him for the crimes of 9/11? Why hasn't a grand jury been called to indict Osama bin Laden?
Sure. I don't know the legal thinking behind that one way or the other. Did you? Son? Okay. Sorry.
The website says there's no evidence.
Well, no, the website does not say that.
FBI's website.
I can't speak for the FBI. I think it is without a shred of doubt about responsibility for 9/11. And among other things, the United States removed a government in Afghanistan as a result of it for having directly embedded those who carried out 9/11. And we are doing what I understand to be everything we can to, one way or another, quote unquote, bring to justice those who are involved with 9/11. So I don't think there's any doubt either about who did it or the fact that the United States is doing everything in its power to bring to justice those involved and to also make sure that such people can't do anything remotely like it again. Anybody on this side? This side of the room's been... Yes, sir. We'll get this in there.
We'll have a simpler question for you. Let me preface
preface it by saying I'm a non-interventionist, which puts me in the company of Thomas Jefferson. There may be three primary reasons the Middle East doesn't like the United States so much. It could be a religious issue, a cultural issue, and foreign policy issue. If the only issue us as Americans and our government has control over would be foreign policy, why don't we change to something that may be more to their liking and get back to our own country, remove the bases that we have in 140 other countries, become non-interventionist, and be safer that way.
Megan, let me begin with you here, or turn to you, which is for those who think if one of the reasons the Middle East is as costly as it is to us is because we are involved in it. So why not practice a policy of either less involvement or non-involvement? Would a version of isolationism and distancing serve American interests?
Complicated question, and I guess I would answer it by asking you to imagine a Middle East where there is not a U.S. presence or U.S. involvement. And particularly if you looked at the Middle East today, and what if we were to remove ourselves from the Middle East today, I think we could spin out a number of scenarios that would be worse, not just for the United States, but it would be worse for a lot of the people who live in the Middle East, and it would have some major global ramifications. So that's one way of looking at it. And I think that there is, and let me take Iraq as a country that I have spent close to 2 years in the last 5. There's really a love-hate relationship there. I think you find really two consistent themes when you talk to Iraqis about an American presence in Iraq and in the Middle East. Is one, they want us to go, and two, not exactly right now. It is simply a recognition that there is a certain amount of stability that the U.S. presence brings, but at the same time that it is inherently undesirable. So you're dealing with some conflicting emotions there. I'd also say there's a whole other line of thinking to be explored in answer to your question, having to do with whether or not actually the people who are most vocal in the Middle East about what they want American foreign policy to be, and I would say a lot of those are the extremists, whether they're representing, there are people who to be negotiated with, and I would say that in most cases, some of the political demands that you get by the most extremist vocal groups are ones that, if satisfied, would not lead to peace and sweetness and light in the world and in the Middle East, but in fact, they would just morph into other, more extreme demands. And so I think you have to
But no meeting is as memorable as our first, and that was on September 11th, 1991. And I was meeting with the Prime Minister, and indeed I saw the second plane fly into the Twin Towers on the television set in your office. And what we had was probably also then the strangest meeting I've had in my diplomatic life. It was this question of whether we continue doing the business at hand, which, shall we say, was difficult to concentrate. Talked about
what is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.